Hong Kong is preparing for Typhoon Saula's lashings.
Authorities have announced flight cancellations as well as suspension of classes. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. The Marcos administration is seeking sustainable development in insurgency-free areas. Philippines and Montenegro cooperate to boost their respective tourism sectors. Washington greenlights military aid to Taiwan despite Beijing's warnings. Russia and Turkey are eyeing to revive the Black Sea grain deal. And 2 car bombs explode, rocking Ecuador's capital of Quito. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, has transferred the responsibility for replacing PhilIDs affected by the Manila Central Post Office fire to the Philippine Postal Corporation, or PhilPost. A total of 7,352 PhilIDs, which were printed in collaboration with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, have been delivered to the Central Mail Exchange Center. The PSA assures that the reissued PhilID cards were replaced at no cost to the affected registered individuals. These replacement cards will be sent to the addresses provided during the initial registration process.
The Marcos administration is seeking sustainable development in insurgency-free areas in the country. This is in time for the celebration of the National Peace Consciousness Month this September. In an event in Puerto Princesa City, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. declared Palawan Island as insurgency-free. The theme is dubbed as Kapayapaan ng Bawat Mamamayan, underscoring the shared vision of all Filipinos for a peaceful and prosperous country. The president also encourages the National Task Force to end the local communist armed conflict to sustain the gains of peace in Palawan via the effective delivery of government services in geographically isolated and disadvantaged communities.
The governor of Batanes has engaged in discussions with the U.S. ambassador to the Philippines regarding potential development projects for cooperation. U.S. Ambassador Mary Kay Carlson has confirmed that she had a meeting with Batanes Governor Marilu Cayco at the U.S. Embassy in Manila a few months ago, during which they explored possible areas of cooperation. Some of the projects under consideration involve providing solar lights and constructing a breakwater to facilitate the safe docking of cargo ships during adverse sea conditions in the islands. Ambassador Carlson has noted that the U.S. is still in the process of evaluating these proposals and specific projects for cooperation yet to be determined.
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, forecasts that the inflation in the country has likely accelerated in August. Ann Villanueva for the figures.
According to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, the country's August inflation rate will likely grow from 4.8% to 5.6%. This is due to higher food and transportation costs. The central bank previously said that the overall food inflation was pushed by higher rice prices last month as the country was hit by typhoons Duksuri and Saula. The Department of Agriculture records that the 2 storms inflicted agricultural damage amounting to over 4 billion pesos. The foreign exchange rate yesterday stood at 56.7 pesos to a dollar, effectively making imported goods more expensive. BSP, however, notes that the August inflation might have been tempered by lowered energy prices. Meanwhile, state statistician Dennis Mapa identifies the key items in the Consumer Price Index basket. These are namely rice, electricity, and transportation. Ann Villanueva, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has given his approval to impose mandated price ceilings on rice nationwide due to the recent surge in retail prices. This decision follows a sectoral meeting with the president focusing on the government's initiatives to secure an adequate rice supply in the country. Under this mandate, regular milled rice will have a price ceiling of 41 pesos per kilogram, while well-milled rice will be capped at 45 pesos. The proposal put forth by the Departments of Agriculture or DA and Trade and Industry or DTI seeks to ensure that rice remains affordable to all, especially the underprivileged and marginalized who are most affected by the price increases. Both the DA and DTI have committed to rigorously enforce these mandated price ceilings.
Pag-asa spots the eye of Typhoon Haikui at 710 kilometers east-northeast of Itbayat, Batanes as of 5 p.m. today. Haikui is moving west at 15 kilometers per hour with maximum sustained winds of 120 kilometers per hour near the center with gustiness of up to 150 kilometers per hour. The State Weather Bureau has yet to raise a storm wind signal in the part of the country. Meanwhile, Pag-asa notes that the southwest monsoon enhanced by Haikui, Typhoon Saula, and severe tropical storm Kirgogi will bring a significant amount of rain over the western portion of Luzon in the next 3 days. The weather agency forecasts that Haikui to reach its peak intensity on Sunday morning prior to its landfall over Taiwan.
The Philippines and Montenegro have shown a keen interest in establishing a partnership to enhance their respective tourism sectors. During a courtesy call to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the Malacanang Palace, Montenegro's Prime Minister Dritan Abazovic expresses a strong interest in exploring collaboration in the field of tourism. President Marcos emphasizes the vital role of tourism in the Philippines economy and highlights the potential for both nations to adopt a mutually advantageous strategy for developing this sector. Such a partnership has the potential to strengthen diplomatic ties and generate economic benefits for both countries. Prime Minister Abazovic is in the Philippines to attend the FIBA match between Montenegro and the United States.
The international research firm Strat-based ADR Institute, or ADRI, has strongly criticized China's newly unveiled 10-line map, denouncing it as a significant affront to the Philippines' 2016 arbitral victory in the West Philippine Sea. Natalie Pichi has the details.
ADRI contends that this new map from China represents a poorly executed attempt to validate its territorial claims, disseminating this information while pushing the narrative that the West Philippine Sea is part of its territory. ADRI President Victor Andres Manhit views it as a mockery of established international laws, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. He underscores the importance of the Philippines and its allies maintaining a unified stance against such coercive and antagonistic states like China. Natalie Pichi reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, Pyongyang is opening its borders. Morale is low in Ukraine's front line. And UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak appoints a new defense minister. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
In these times, having a desirable physical appearance has become widely acceptable. Social media has also helped propel the need to always be flawless and beautiful. Healthy men and women have succumbed to the urge to always look their best by undergoing cosmetic surgery to enhance their beauty. Doc Ezekiel Bingyumang of Contura Medica gives us the ins and outs of the combined art, science, and business of aesthetic surgery.
If you improve one's physical appearance, yung self-esteem niyan mag-i-improve. You'll be more confident with your social interactions, with your professional life.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m. Ngayong linggo, sa Cine Throwback.
Ba't kasi natulog ka eh? Napagod ako eh. Siyempre man, dapat matulog ang tao. Saka? Huwag madaling siya umuwi ah. Baka maunahan pa kayo ng nanay doon. Tamad-tamad niyo! Ako, sipag! Hilahin natin yan!
Ngayong linggo, alas 12 ng tanghali. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Meron tayong mga sit-in.
Si Anthony Ocampo!
Ira Lipata! Piscat Legado!
Sino naman pinatawag yung anak ko?
Yung anak niyo, napakatigas ng ulo.
Sa bahay, matigas din ulo ng anak ko. Hindi ko naman kayo pinapatawag ah.
Napakatok naman dito. Sama ng janggo eh.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Thailand's billionaire former premier Thaksin Shinawatra has submitted a request for a royal pardon, citing the outgoing justice minister in his request. Thailand's most famous politician is currently serving an 8-year prison sentence for abuse of power and conflicts of interest after returning from 15 years of self-imposed exile last week. The pardon request was submitted by Thaksin's family. The former telecoms tycoon returned to Thailand in a dramatic homecoming, arriving on a private jet and greeting supporters before being moved to a prison. A request for royal pardon must be submitted through the Corrections Department to the Justice Minister, then considered by the Prime Minister, who must then submit it to King Mahava Jiralongkorn. Thaksin's return last week coincided with political ally and fellow tycoon Sretha Thavisin winning a parliamentary vote to become Prime Minister that same day, adding to speculations that a deal must have been struck prior to his return. Thaksin denied those allegations and has rejected talk of a deal with the generals.
The Biden administration approves the United States' direct military aid to Taiwan despite China's warnings. This is after the visit of U.S. Congressional Delegate Rob Wittman to Taipei. Under the Taiwan Relations Act, the U.S. will supply Taiwan with weapons for its defense capabilities. The U.S., however, insisted that the military aid did not imply any recognition of Taiwan's sovereignty. Beijing, on the other hand, is against Washington's actions as China perceives it as a harm to the security of Taiwan.
对台军援军售，养肥的只是美军工复合体，损害的却是台湾同胞的安全与福祉。
Pyongyang is moving further to reopen its border for tourists. The move marks a significant shift after years of stringent border controls imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Pyongyang has adopted a new law seeking to boost and widen its tourism sector. Meanwhile, according to North Korea's State Emergency Epidemic Prevention Headquarters, North Korean citizens abroad are now allowed to return home. The country previously sealed its border in early 2020 to protect itself from the coronavirus disease.
Approximately 85% of Singapore's population, roughly 2.3 million citizens, have already cast their votes in the 2023 presidential elections. This election is of significant importance as it will be closely monitored by the ruling People's Action Party, or PAP, in the wake of recent political scandals that have surrounded the party. The role of the president in Singapore is largely ceremonial, with the real power resting in the hands of the prime minister. Currently, the front-runner in the election is former Deputy Prime Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam, a longtime PAP stalwart, before resigning ahead of his candidacy. He enjoys the backing of the government, and if he secures victory, it may serve as an indicator of continued support for the PAP despite recent scandals. Notably, several opposition leaders have thrown their support behind former insurance executive Tan Kin Lian as a presidential candidate, and another contender is Nang Kok Song, the former chief investment officer of Singapore's Sovereign Wealth Fund. Voting is compulsory for Singapore's 2.7 million citizens, and those who fail to vote without a valid reason may face removal from the voter list.
Morale has been running low on the Ukrainian front as more and more soldiers are seeking to leave the front lines. Catherine Ortula has that story.
The war may have triggered a patriotic impulse within Ukraine's ranks, but the long war has taken its toll on Ukraine's front line. Some Ukrainians are refusing to fight despite societal pressures and warnings from authorities cracking down on draft evaders amid a difficult counteroffensive.
Мотивація до війни була в першу чергу зв'язана з тим, що я є патріот України, тобто я хотів воювати за вільну Україну, але побачивши всі ситуації, які проходять там, кров і тому подібне, я зрозумів, що я лякаюся цього, я не можу це витримувати психологічно.
Since the beginning of the war, authorities have detained 13,600 people trying to cross the border outside of checkpoints. Another 6,100 have been caught when attempting to leave with forged documents. They now face up to 5 and 12 years in prison, respectively.
Я не назвав себе фізично і морально слабкою людиною, але якщо я прийду, то мене просто так кудись в гарячу точку, я нічого не вмію, мене буквально не підготують і мене просто вб'ють. Ну і що, це горе матері, це складно буде що їй, що іншим, що дівчині, що друзям.
All top officials in charge of conscription have been fired in recent weeks, and investigators have uncovered a large-scale corruption scheme in almost all regions of the country. Typically, men who didn't want to do military service because of their beliefs would be offered an alternative, like working in agriculture or social services. But that soon changed. The choice disappeared with the declaration of martial law in Ukraine last year. Ukraine's defense ministry urges people to keep their details updated on a national database and says that if they are called up, they'll be sent to suitable posts. However, there are claims of officers using harsh or intimidating tactics. There are also reports of conscripts finding themselves on the front line with just a month of training.
Я, когда учился, у нас была военная кафедра. Мы проходили военную кафедру, и поэтому я являюсь офицером запаса и подлежу мобилизации в первую очередь. То есть я понимаю, что я должен, что я обязан защищать свою страну в первую очередь, но та военная кафедра, что мы проходили, это был в кабинете один раз в неделю, то есть никакой практической информации и пользы не было. То есть я не считаю, что я военный и что я готов к боевым действиям.
To avoid breaking the law, some men have left before turning 18, never came back since the conflict began. Those who remain within the country are part of mass group chats that help them avoid being drafted, giving tip-offs on where drafting officers are patrolling. These chat rooms span across the country, containing more than 100,000 members each.
Я для себе прийняв рішення, що потрібно зараз виїхати, доки мені немає 18 років, щоб мене пропустили на кордоні. Тому що якщо щось станеться з батьком, то я залишаюся єдиною опорою для своєї мами і для своїх сестер. Там фінансова підтримка або ж моральна.
There may be an undeniable need, but also an uncomfortable truth that the battlefield isn't where everyone chooses to live and die. Catherine Ortula for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will host his Turkish counterpart for a two-day visit beginning Thursday. This after Ankara's top diplomat held talks with Ukrainian officials last week. Julian Bukayan has more.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is due to visit Russia soon for talks with President Vladimir Putin. Talks are on reviving a deal allowing safe grain shipments across the Black Sea. Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says Lavrov and Hakan Fidan would discuss the situation in the region, particularly in Ukraine, Syria, Libya, and Transcaucasia. Erdogan has used his good relations with Moscow and Kiev to try to bring the two sides into formal peace talks. Julian Bukayan for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The first commercial Russian train carrying goods to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia by way of Iran leaves for its pilot journey as part of the International North-South Transport Corridor, or INSTC. To tell us more, here is RT correspondent Youssef Jalali.
Ports and Maritime Organization has announced that 10 million tons of the transit between Russia and India takes place through Iran. Moscow has been increasingly looking at Iran as a safe transit route, as the country has been shut off from many global trade lanes by Western sanctions. The surge in trade between Moscow and New Delhi has come as both countries have shown determination to boost economic partnership, especially amid the ongoing Ukraine conflict. The goods are transported through the International North-South Transport Corridor, which passes through Iran to connect Russia and Eastern Europe to India and the Persian Gulf nations.
The transit capacity in Iran is drastically higher than 10 million tons. Given the capacities in Iran's northern and southern ports, we should think about bigger numbers. A significant portion of the cargoes that move between Russia and India can be shipped by containers. This is an advantage because Iranian ports are fully equipped for providing container shipment.
The North-South Corridor is a 7,200-kilometer network of ship, rail and road routes for transit between India, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, Central Asia and Europe. It has three main branches, all passing through Iran to reach India and the Persian Gulf. While the idea to launch the transit network was first launched back in 2000, trade on the INSTC finally started in June last year with a shipment from Russia to India through Iran. Since the start of the Ukraine conflict, the North-South Corridor has gained strategic importance for Moscow and Tehran. With both countries targeted by Western sanctions, they're now spending billions of dollars to facilitate and accelerate trade through the strategic network to neutralize the Western restrictions. The North-South Corridor provides a quick shortcut for Russia to bypass the Suez Canal route. Experts say the INSTC is 40% shorter and 30% cheaper than traditional routes in terms of distance and time.
All calculations suggest that Iran is 30 to 40% more efficient than any other rival route, both in terms of time and expenses. As the transit volume goes up, the costs further decrease correspondingly. So we need to speed up efforts to increase the volume of trade through this corridor.
The INSTC is yet to start running in full capacity. The three major beneficiaries of the corridor, namely Iran, Russia and India, are each working to develop their ports and transport infrastructure to expand the emerging trade route. For its part, Iran is working on its northern and southern ports, as well as its railway network, to facilitate trade through the INSTC. Iran and Russia are jointly completing Iran's northern Rasht-Astara railway that will connect the Caspian Sea to the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean.
We have held several rounds of negotiations with the Russian side, both in the form of B2B and at the government level. Fortunately, we're at a stage where we have the negotiations behind, and the two sides have entered the action phase. They are now investigating the potentials and capacities of each other to complete the supply chain.
It seems that the political and security developments are reshaping the world's economic outlook, with a new transit map evolving and new partnerships and alliances taking form. Experts say with a potential trade capacity of 100 million tons, the INSTC will be the future trade route in the Eastern Hemisphere. Youssef Jalali, RT.
Brigadier General Bryce Oligui Nguema, Gabon's new strongman leader, is set to be inaugurated as the transitional president at the Constitutional Court.
Le président de la transition prêtera serment devant la Cour constitutionnelle le lundi 4 septembre 2023 à la présidence de la République. Signé le général de brigade Oligui Nguema Brice, président du comité de la transition et la restauration des institutions.
This transition comes in the wake of the release of images depicting the opulent family properties of the deposed Gabonese President Ali Bongo. French analyst Thomas Borrell, specializing in France's influence in Africa, characterizes Gabon as an oil-rich nation effectively run as a family estate by the Bongo dynasty for nearly 6 decades. General Oligui establishes a temporary constitutional court and will gradually introduce transitional institutions to ensure the continued operation of public services. The military government has also affirmed its commitment to honoring all of Gabon's domestic and international obligations.
UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has made a significant change in his cabinet by appointing former Energy Secretary Grant Shapps as the new Defense Secretary. This transition has raised eyebrows as Shapps lacks prior military experience and has primarily held domestic roles in politics. He will be replacing Ben Wallace, who is known for his strong support of Ukraine. In contrast to Shapps, Ben Wallace had a distinguished background as an Army veteran. While some in the West believe Shapps is capable of taking on the role despite his lack of military experience, political opponents have criticized the appointment, viewing it as somewhat of a farce. They point out that Shapps has already served in 5 different cabinet positions in less than 12 months, sparking debate and controversy regarding the reshuffling of key positions within the UK government. The UN peacekeepers in Mali have packed up and left some of its bases ahead of the agreed-upon deadline to bring their troops back. This decision matched what most people in the country wanted, as they strongly insisted on having them removed. RT's Caleb Mopin brings us more.
Well, at the United Nations, we heard a report on the withdrawal of UN forces from Mali, the ongoing withdrawal as UN forces, the peacekeeping forces deployed there, have left. And while they've been in the country, they've accomplished very little in terms of actually fighting terrorism. And this seems to fit a pattern of Western countries deploying their military to various parts of the world in the name of fighting terrorism, the war on terror, and overseeing the country seeing terrorism increase and seeing more instability in the country overall. Now, the United States does not agree with Mali's situation, does not agree with how China placed things and the narrative that they've put forward about how to fight terrorism. Instead, the United States lashed out and criticized the Mali government. And we also heard the U.S. representative speaking before the council. She criticized the Wagner Group and Russia.
MINUSMA's withdrawal limits the ability of the international community to protect civilians from the predations of Wagner, whose activities contribute to greater insecurity in the country.
However, the attitude of the population in Mali is a stark contrast to what we're hearing from the Western leaders. There's been public displays of support for Russia and for Wagner in the streets of Mali. And we then heard before the UN Security Council remarks from Russia's deputy ambassador explaining the complex situation in the country.
We continue to make sure that our Russian-Malian bilateral cooperation doesn't allow our former Western partners to sleep peacefully. They are obviously relapsing into their colonial approaches and aren't ready to abandon their double standards. These countries could choose to help the Malian authorities and not try in every way to discredit their efforts to combat terrorism. However, unfortunately, these countries don't know how to cooperate with the nations of the Global South on an equal and respectful basis. Therefore, it's not worth paying attention to their colonial phantom pains.
Up next, YouTube mom Ruby Frankie is arrested for child abuse. Dozens of people have died at an anti-UN rally. And explosives rock Ecuador's capital. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break. Don't go away.
Ang inyong sumbong siguradong may respondeng katapat. Hindi nagdadalawang isip na tumulong sino man ang nangangailangan. Exclusive! Isang batang binubuli dahil sa kanyang bingot, nabigyan ng bagong pag-asa.
Confident na siya, hindi na siya mahihiya.
Expose! May-ari ng isang camera rental shop, nasa lisihan, modus ng mga kawatan, ibinunyag sa responde. Viral ngayon, panggugulo sa isang resort sa Calamba, Laguna, ating inimbestigahan. Pagsugpo naman sa sakit na tuberculosis o TB, isinusulong ng Health Department. Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi, ito ang Responde, Mata ng Mamamayan.
Hong Kong is preparing for Typhoon Saula's lashings. Authorities have announced flight cancellations as well as suspension of classes as the storm barrels toward China's southern coast. According to Hong Kong's observatory, Saula's wind speed topped at 205 kilometers per hour as it was brushing in from 230 kilometers east-southeast of the financial hub around 8 in the morning. The country's Weather Bureau forecasts that Saula will bring torrential showers and violent winds. Meanwhile, Guangdong province has declared a windstorm emergency level 1, the highest level of emergency response.
The mother of former Famous Family YouTube channel 8 passengers, Ruby Frankie, has been arrested under the suspicion of 2 counts of aggravated child abuse. Santa Clara Evans Public Safety Department released a statement on Ruby Frankie's child who climbed out of a window to ask for help from their neighbors at their residence. The report also adds that the neighbors decided to call the police when they noticed that the kid had their ankles and wrists duct taped. Officials said upon finding that the first child was severely malnourished and emaciated, authorities were prompted to enact an immediate arrest warrant. Upon enacting the said warrant, they discovered several wounded kids with varying degrees of injuries and signs of abuse. The 4 victims were taken in by the Department of Child and Family Services. The residents pertaining to the crime belong to Frankie's business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, both of whom have been arrested for alleged child abuse. In June of 2022, Frankie announced her new channel called Connections with Hildebrandt, as it claims to be a support group to help mothers.
In this home, you don't get personal space, because this is my space, because I'm the parent. And as long as you're living in my home, it is my job to know everything about you. You don't get to sneak, you don't get to hide, you don't get to have secrets.
Ruby Frankie has faced criticism towards her parenting style from clips on social media showing harsh punishments and dictatorial rules that sparked rumors of child abuse. Aggravated child abuse perpetrators will have to face 15 years in prison and a fine of up to $10,000 per offense.
At least 48 people have died in a crackdown on an anti-UN rally in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. On Wednesday, Congolese soldiers stopped a religious group from holding a demonstration against UN peacekeepers in the city of Goma. Arlene Ocampo has that story.
Initially, the army said 10 people died when troops entered a radio station and a place of worship. They also said a police officer had been lynched. Now, the death toll has been revised to 48 people killed in addition to the police officer. Another 75 have been injured. The Congo has been ravaged by militia violence for 3 decades. The UN peacekeeping mission has been criticized, with many people saying it has failed to prevent conflict. Despite its presence, militias still have a strong influence in the region. The latest violence comes amid an ongoing debate over when the UN force should leave the country. Arlene Ocampo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Explosions rocked the night air in the Ecuadorian capital of Quito overnight Wednesday. Police blame the violence on a show of force by organized crime gangs. Jessica Bautista for the report.
No injuries have been reported. 2 car bombs targeted the department that runs Ecuador's prisons. The cars had apparently been loaded with gas cylinders full of fuel, dynamite, and a slow fuse. Police also report several grenades exploded. 6 people have been arrested. Such attacks are rare in Quito. The head of anti-drug investigations speculates an inmate transfer earlier in the day aimed at preventing gang violence in prisons may have triggered the explosions. As well, police and soldiers raided a prison elsewhere in the country Wednesday searching for weapons, ammunition, and explosives. Drug gangs use prisons as operation centers. Jessica Bautista for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
According to Nobel Foundation, Russia, Belarus, and Iran have been invited back to Stockholm's Nobel Prize banquet after being left out last year because of the Ukraine war. The foundation said it sought to include even those who did not share the values of the Nobel Prize. Last year, the Nobel Foundation said ambassadors from Russia and Belarus would not be invited due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, while Iran faced long criticism for its human rights record. Meanwhile, Swedish Liberal MEP Karin Karlsborough accused the foundation of setting a dangerous precedent by giving a green light to inviting Russia to a glamorous party while missiles fall over Ukrainian cultural centers and murder children. She also called Russia, Belarus, and Iran rogue states that oppress their citizens, wage war and terror against their own people and neighboring countries.
Let's head over to Ontario in Canada, where students are gearing up for the new school year. Among several new additions to the province's educational system's curriculum is mental health support and financial literacy. Yolanda Aspiras reports.
Ontario announces several changes in the school curriculum as students head back to class next week. This includes the introduction of a new language curriculum, a technology course, a refocus on the development of reading, writing, and basic math skills, and the provision of mental health supports. Starting this September, the province will require all publicly funded school boards to follow provincial student achievement plan and metrics. The new curriculum will include financial literacy, where students will learn about budgeting and acquire hands-on skills. Ontario's Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, believes that this will enhance student success and prepare them for future careers. Additionally, Ontario will allocate $700 million in base education funding and invest $109 million in a new strategy to boost literacy rates, which includes the hiring of 2,000 more educators. Familiar tensions are ongoing between the province and teachers. Minister Lecce wants all education worker unions to agree to a deal that prevents future teacher strikes from happening and to continue negotiations. In response, ETFO, or Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario, AEFO, or the French Teachers Union, and OECTA, Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association, say they are not considering the proposal at this time and is set to hold a strike vote throughout September. In Toronto, Ontario, Yolanda Aspiras for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
A man driving a full-size bull named Howdy Doody in the passenger seat was pulled over by police in the U.S. state of Nebraska. After a stunned witness reported the odd sight, officers in Norfolk were dispatched for a call for a vehicle with a cow inside. Police assumed that it would be a small calf, but what they heard versus what they chanced upon was a full-size bull riding shotgun in a 1996 Ford Crown Victoria. The car is a retired police cruiser driven by the bull's owner, Lee Mayer, where the car's moon roof on the passenger side had been removed so the animal could fit. The idea of boarding Howdy Doody had been in Mayer's mind for years, but it took a doubting granddaughter to push him to pull it off. According to authorities, passenger cars are often retrofitted to transport animals. Approval and enforcement of such auto retrofits fall under the responsibility of the Nebraska State Patrol. Mayer said that he had never gotten any type of police approval for the wheelbase and that the police stop was not his first rodeo.
With that situation, the officer chose
Iceland's government says it will allow whaling to resume, but with stricter conditions and monitoring. The decision ends a 2-month temporary ban imposed amid animal welfare concerns. Chrisanne Fragata has more details.
Iceland is just one of the 3 countries that allow commercial whaling. Norway and Japan are the other 2. The temporary ban came in June after the government found that the hunt does not comply with the country's Animal Welfare Act. Iceland's Food and Veterinary Authority concluded the use of explosive harpoons by whalers took too long to kill the sea mammals, prolonging their suffering. There's only one whaling company left in Iceland. Others say it is no longer profitable because of the dwindling demand for whale meat. Opposition to whaling has been growing in recent years, with a majority now opposed to the practice. A survey published in June indicates 51% of Icelanders oppose the hunt, and only 29% are in favor of it. Chrisanne Fragata for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, Britain aims to be a big AI player. Find out the winners of the FIBA World Cup second round. And why not catch a movie this weekend? Our reviews are in. Catch more news in business, tech, sports, and entertainment when we return.
Ako po ang guest this Saturday sa Lutong Dansa. At sabay-sabay po tayong magluto at mag-enjoy sa Vietnamese dishes na aming lulutuin. See ya!
Darating pa kaya ang araw na hindi na tayo makakaranas ng baha sa Pilipinas?
Sinabi namin na lumulubog yung lupa dyan. So ngayon, yung mga dating simbahan, yung mga kalye, nasa ilalim na ng tubig. Ito ay totoo na nangyayari.
Kasi ang sabi ng Pangulo sa DPWH, teka muna, huwag naman flood control lang. 86% ng lahat ng hazard o panganib sa bansa natin ay hydrometeorological. Typhoon and flooding.
May solusyon pa nga ba ang problema ng bansa sa baha? Mag-reality check tayo.
Katulad dito sa Bulacan, ang paglubog niya ay 10 centimeters per year.
Nako.
Mga ganyan.
Banking giant UBS announces its plans to fully absorb Credit Suisse's century-old Swiss division and slash thousands of jobs across Switzerland. Bernadette Varghini reports.
Switzerland's largest bank says it aims to complete most of the integration by the end of 2026, with more than $10 billion in cost savings by then. The announcement of fully absorbing Credit Suisse's domestic unit comes as UBS posts its second quarter income statement. UBS presents its first results since the mega merger was finalized in June. UBS posted a towering net profit of $29.2 billion, although it was heavily distorted by the gigantic takeover. Credit Suisse took a $10.1 billion loss in the second quarter. Analysts described the takeover as positive. Investors also seemed enthused, sending UBS's share price jumping nearly 5% in midday trading to 23.24 Swiss francs or $26.40. Bernadette Regini for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Technology Committee says UK government's approach to artificial intelligence is behind EU and the US. Threats to privacy, copyright, and employment calls for countries to take action in AI regulations. From the United Kingdom, here's Ryan Florentino for the reports.
The UK is now being pushed to introduce new legislation to control artificial intelligence or risk falling behind the EU and the US in setting the pace for regulating the technology by members of parliament. Rishi Sunak's government was urged to act as it prepares to host a global AI safety summit at Bletchley Park in November. The EU could overtake the UK in efforts to make AI safe unless action is taken. A spokesperson highlighted the summit and a £100 million initial investment in a task force to encourage the safe development of AI models. If legislation isn't introduced in the King's Speech in November, the earliest legislation could become law in 2025, the committee says in a report published Thursday. A key part of his plan is the November summit, which the government says will be the world's first major global summit on AI safety. The committee argued as wide a range of countries as possible should be invited, which would include China. The use of copyrighted material to train AI systems is also one of the challenges. Generative AI systems can now create new works in the style of famous artists, actors, and musicians. But to pull off this feat, AI is trained on huge amounts of copyrighted material. Many authors, actors, artists, and musicians argue that AI should not be trained on their works without permission and compensation. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Ryan Florentino for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In the FIBA World Cup 2023, Latvia stunned Spain in round 2 of the tournament. Jasmine Agustin has the score.
Latvia has pulled off what might just be the biggest upset of the 2023 FIBA World Cup after taking down reigning champion Spain 74-69 in Indonesia. Davis Bertens led a spirited Latvian comeback down 12 in the third quarter. In a game that saw 14 lead changes and 14 deadlocks, La Roja's 14-point run late in the third frame was shaping up to mark the beginning of the end for Latvia. But with Bertens leading 5 Latvians in double figures, Spain's final attempts to overturn a late-game deficit failed to materialize as it absorbed a shock loss at the start of round 2. The historic victory breaks the door wide open in Group L for the Latvians and leaves the 2019 champions facing elimination. Latvia and Spain now share a 3-1 record ahead of decisive matchups with Brazil and Canada, respectively, to determine Group L's 2 quarter-final bound sides. Meanwhile, 4-0 and still undefeated. This is the current win-loss record of Team USA after defeating Montenegro in a close game earlier, 86-73. Team USA was put under pressure on the start of the game, but they turned the momentum on their side and outscored Montenegro in the third quarter. Another close game was recorded today as Italy edged Serbia, giving the world's number 10 a 2-point lead win in the second round of the group phase, 78-76. Simone Fontecchio led Italy with 30 points that stunned Serbia. The Azeris cut the 51-62 lead of Serbia to 61-62 in the first minutes of the fourth quarter and changed the momentum of the game to their favor. Italy's current win-loss record is 3-1 in par to Serbia's record. Jasmine Agustin reporting for sports in Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The prestigious Venezia 80 has kick-started on August 30, and these are the top 5 major films to be screened at the biggest and one of the most important film exhibitions in the world. Also, Monday first screening continues to win over the hearts of people nationwide, so why not catch it this weekend? Stephanie Mayo has the scoop.
Venice is currently dazzling cinephiles with its exciting lineup of international films featuring Hollywood stars amid the ongoing SAG-AFTRA strike. Venezia's 80th edition boasts 21 films in competition, with 27 more in the Horizons and Horizons Extra competition and 20 titles premiering out of competition. The Lido will open with Italian director Eduardo De Angelis' historical drama Comandante and then close with Spanish filmmaker J.A. Bayona's thriller Society of the Snow, while tennis drama Challengers from renowned Italian director Luca Guadagnino starring Zendaya pulled out of the event. The lineup at the Lido remains to be impressive. Bradley Cooper returns as director for the Leonard Bernstein biopic Maestro, and he also stars as Bernstein opposite Carey Mulligan. Oscar winner Sofia Coppola is back in the game with Priscilla, based on Priscilla Presley's 1985 memoir Elvis and Me. After nearly a quarter of a century since he premiered Fight Club in 1999 at the Venice, American director David Fincher returns with The Killer, starring Michael Fassbender and Tilda Swinton. Greek filmmaker Yorgos Lanthimos, who rose to fame with The Lobster and The Favorite, returns with Poor Things, his Frankenstein-like surreal film starring Emma Stone. Pablo Larraín's promising El Conde is also part of this year's Venice with its dark comedy on Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet. All this and more at the historic Palazzo del Cinema at this year's Venice, which runs from August 30th to September 9th.
Manonood lang kami ng sine.
Ay! Lo, happy all for you, Mommy Ja!
I love you, Lydia!
Meanwhile, before hitting Venice, Italy this week, why not see Monday first screening Net25's debut feature film this weekend? Net25's debut film Monday first screening hit #1 in the Philippines on its first day. Now on its day 3 in Philippine theaters, movie lovers are still flocking to the cinemas to catch the wholesome romantic comedy starring veteran actors Gina Alahar and Ricky Davao. Movie buffs, celebrities, and social media influencers only have good things to say about the movie thanks to the two stars' chemistry, the heartwarming story, and the inspiring lessons. Don't miss the chance to see Monday first screening, now showing in over 100 cinemas in the Philippines. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Toy manufacturer Lego is set to release a Braille brick set in the English and French market for the first time this September. The bricks are accessible to help blind and visually impaired children with the inclusion of letters and numbers in Braille. This toy was designed with 6 dots as with a domino tile. The Lego bricks consist of 63 symbols with patterns of raised dots which visually impaired people use their sense of touch to read. Prior to the set release, children have played and learned with Lego's Braille bricks since 2020 in limited schools and organizations. Each Lego Braille brick set has 287 bricks in 5 colors, specifically white, white, yellow, green, red, and blue with braille studs on them. These studs are arranged to correspond with numbers and letters in the braille system. Meanwhile, the toy company said using Lego bricks will introduce the braille system as a fun way of creating and communicating among children aged 6 and above. The toy manufacturer has also announced plans to bring this out soon in Italian, German, and Spanish toy stores.
That is so cool. I remember playing with Legos as a child.
I remember playing with Lego as a child on the floor with my brothers.
Yeah, so now it is truly for everybody.
Exactly. To send you off this week, here's a quote from American actor Morgan Freeman. Never let pride be your guiding principle. Let your accomplishments speak for you.
That is one of my favorite characteristics when I meet people, if they have that humility and they just exude the confidence, knowing it in themselves, not having to speak about it.
Exactly. And those accomplishments, if you ask me, are between me and God.
Yes, very true. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Happy weekend, everybody. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.